Hi guys, the Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch really isn't the sharpest tool in the drawer, but then Rishi Sunak's cabinet is a race to the bottom when it comes to talent. Now, she was invited onto Sky News to discuss a multi-million pound investment that the car manufacturer BMW is making in Britain. This follows news from Sky also, which I'll leave a link to in the description, of £75 million in taxpayer money to invite the German car maker to produce the Mini in Britain. Kemi is asked how this is a Brexit benefit, and she struggles to answer.
Do you think Brexit was really good for the British car industry?
Well, I think we need to be very clear about what they're talking about. This is a rule that was brought in with the...
You're supposed to answer yes. You're a Brexiteer. Was Brexit really good for the car industry? You should say yes, it has. It's been a wonderful success for the British car industry. But then, of course, the problem with that is then you'd be asked for an example, and then you would have to run out of the studio. Hey, this is a Brexiteer. This is somebody who still thinks Brexit was a good idea. She hasn't come out and said, actually, I voted to leave, but I was wrong. No. She's still defending Brexit, but pretty badly, because she was asked a very simple question here. Has Brexit been good for the British car industry? And she started talking about a specific case. Not, yes, it has. Isn't that strange? Like, even Brexiteers are running away from Brexit.
The trade and continuity agreement. So this is our trade deal with the EU, has tariffs on rules of origin of car components if they're not from the UK and the EU. So this is something that applies to both sides. It's not something that applies just to UK car manufacturers. It applies to EU car manufacturers.
Yeah,
I've been speaking, let me finish, you asked me the question.
Absolutely.
What I've been doing is speaking to all the manufacturers, understand what they need, but I've also been speaking to the EU Trade Commissioner. You would have seen reports that he agrees with me. This is something that we're working on. We just need to make sure that the rules which made sense when that agreement was negotiated continue to make sense as the world is changing. When those rules were put in place, we didn't have COVID, we didn't have the war in Russia and Ukraine, we didn't have the supply chain disruption, which is now making rules which were perfectly fine previously less so. So that is something that we're actively working on, and we need to make sure that we don't put undue pressure on car manufacturers across Europe. It's not just a UK issue.
But to be clear, if Brexit hadn't happened, this wouldn't be an issue in the UK.
If Brexit hadn't happened, we would not have had a trade deal, and so we would not have had those specific rules in place. Mm-hmm. But
it's like, oh my God, how do you respond to this? It's like, well, if we didn't have Brexit, we wouldn't have these problems. If we had been in the European Union, we wouldn't have the... Oh, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to say that. But let's continue.
I think it's really important to make sure that we talk about these things in the round. There are other things which we are able to do because we left the European Union, such as the CPTPP trade deal,
which adds 0.08% to GDP over something like 10 years. So what we've done is we've thrown manufacturers under a bus or under a car. We've made it difficult for importers. We made it difficult for exporters. But remember, we have this trade deal. We've given up sovereignty as well to be part of TCPPP. We didn't have a referendum on joining it. It wasn't even a vote in Parliament. But it's going to be a massive success because it's going to add 0.08% to GDP, when we should actually be focusing on where most of the trade is with Europe. No, we're going to focus on trade with countries as far away as possible. Literally as far away as possible from Britain. Instead of focusing on trade with our neighbours. Because what? Because some people voted for something in 2016 that they didn't understand.
Which means that we have rules of origin, rules that work with a lot of South Asia, for example.
So more rules of origin. it's like, oh my goodness. Like the amount of manufacturing to Southeast Asia from Britain is very limited. As we know, most countries trade with their neighbours. Why are Brexiteers against this? I know it's, part of it is xenophobia. We hate Europeans, okay. But when it comes to selling goods, like, who cares who's buying the goods? Is it really that important? We don't want to be selling goods to the French. We hate the French. We prefer to be selling them to people in Indonesia.
That's a new market that's opened. We can't just trade with the people who are next to us. We have to trade with the whole world. And if
there's nothing stop. What Brexiteers like her try to present is this idea that when the UK was a member of the European Union, it had zero trade with Australia, zero trade with China, zero trade with the United States. This is what they try to present. Now that we have left, now we're able to trade. Like, if you don't believe me, ask a whiskey manufacturer in a whiskey distiller or producer in Scotland. You know, where do you sell a lot of your whiskey to? Like, it's idiotic. Now, I don't know if she's this stupid or she's pretending to be stupid because the audience she believes that are listening to this are stupid.
If that means adjusting our trading relationship to do so, then we will do so. But as I said, this isn't a fait accompli. This is what having an independent trade policy looks like. When we were in...
So the independent trade policy is where we have to prop up companies to manufacture in Britain. This is the Brexit Benefit. I leave a link, as I said, in the description of this video to the article. It's about the UK taxpayer paying for Brexit. What we've done is we've cut ourselves off from Europe, our main market. We've made it more difficult for importers to bring in goods to produce cars, for example. And we've made it more difficult for them to sell those cars into the EU, into the single market. And in order to compensate for that problem, instead of actually admitting it's a problem and working towards truly fixing it by rejoining the European Union and eventually the single market, what we're going to do is we're going to give taxpayer money to these companies to invest in Britain. Now, taxpayer money is often spent on investment, but this is a direct consequence of Brexit. Like, how is this a Brexit benefit? Notice here at the very beginning of the interview, like, I know Brexiteers are going to respond with all sorts of comments, but this is a Brexiteer who was asked a very simple question. Has Brexit been good for the UK car industry? And she couldn't answer it. She didn't say yes. So the answer has to be no. The penny has finally dropped, maybe. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.